Today we're doing a short video on turning wood knobs and handles for elm wood stoves. And the first thing I'm going to do is sharpen the tools. This is a bench grinder. The tip of this wants to be very sharp. Today we're turning cherry knobs for the draft and for the door handle of the elm stoves. I make some short ones for the draft with 3 rings. Sometimes I use the 4 rings, sometimes I use the 5 rings, particularly for the door. And this is where I dip them. They get dipped several times in the high gloss polyurethane, and then they stand up on these screws and drip dry. Come back a few hours later and do it again until they've got 6 to 8 coats. This step involves finding the very center of each end of this turning stock. So I connect the opposite corners with a straight edge. You see how they all cross in what should be approximately the center, which that's close. Do the same with the other end. The importance of centering this on the lathe is so that it spins true. Okay, take a center punch where all those lines cross and hit it with a hammer. Do the same with the other end.
Okay.
First thing I do is mount this end in the jaws and tighten it up. This little piece right here. And then, why don't you zoom right in on this little point is going to go inside of that place that I just center punched. Okay, I'm going to take a hammer, tap it a couple of times, lock that down, tighten that up, lock that down, and stand back. I'm going to turn the lathe on, and hopefully it will spin fairly true. Okay, and then I locate this piece, my tool rest, about that far away from it. And the first thing that I'm going to do is to turn this into, see, it's an 8-sided piece. I'm going to turn it into a long cylinder from which I will make a bunch of marks on there for cutting the little knobs. Okay, that's good. So the next step is I'll continue on, do half of this, and then I'll move the tool rest down and do the rest of it. Now we have a cylinder that's approximately 1 3/4 inches in diameter. Make a series of these marks all the way down the length of it. Did you get a picture of the dog? He's being real nice. Okay, and then I'm going to turn it on. Thanks. Okay, here we go. Turning it on. And I'll touch the pencil as I see faint marks. And I use the same spacing for each one of the, remember I showed you different length knobs, 3, 4, 5, sometimes 6. So I have the marks, and the next step will be to take this tool, and the one at the very end is going to be an end, so I'm going to make it smaller. That's the base of the knob. And for each of these lines, I'm going to cut a V-shaped groove. Several passes are needed to do that. Going to be a long one for the door handle. It'll have 5 rings. And then I'm going to cut another indentation like this, which would be the base of the next one. Start repeating the process to shape the next one. I usually try to do an even number. If I do 4 of this size, I'll do 4 of the smaller one. Some people with big hands prefer the longer ones. Some prefer the shorter ones. All done by eye. pretty good. I'll take some sandpaper and lay it on there. I have two pieces of sandpaper here. One's a coarse 180 grit and the other one's a 240, which is very fine. Back the tool rest up a little bit. And it doesn't go into the grooves, it's just going to hit the highlights. Reverse them and use the finer one. This gets very hot. A lot of friction generated. You can aim it at these little corners to try to round them over. Basically what it's going to look like. Some of you may think that it's as simple as pulling a few of these out of a box that says China on it, but now that you've seen me turn them by hand, you know better. With the coarse grit to rough out the shape of it, rounding the corners, taking out any of the saw cut marks. And then go to the 80 grit. Which gives it its final shape. And then with the progressively finer grits, you just make it smoother. Turn it off and take a quick look at it. That's what it looks like before dipping. The last step in the process before dipping these is to drill the holes. Okay, I grab them with the channel locks, dip them in the high gloss polyurethane can and put them right on these little screws. I'll do this process 6 or 8 times before they're finished. That way they build up a nice shiny durable coat. This stuff dries fairly quickly. but you get the idea. Sometimes you get little bubbles. Just break them with my fingernail. Want to get a shot from down low looking up at them. Okay, I put the lid on the can, come back in an hour or so, and do it again.